Hey guys, subscribe for daily content, and if you're shopping for gear, make sure you check out the description for the newest items at some of the very best online retailers. There's also links for some of the items that I personally recommend. Thanks!
What's going on YouTube? Metal Complex here, and today I've got a really interesting knife review slash knife overview to show you guys. This is the new Microtech Ultratech ZBT, or Zero Blade Tolerance. What does that mean? It means that in the open position, this has absolutely zero blade play. Wow, that's awesome, because so many knives outside of the Hawk Deadlock, in fact, all of them, I know the Pentagon, but we don't really count that one, right? All of them have had a little bit of blade play. So this is pretty cool, especially considering it costs like less than a quarter of what the Hawk Deadlock costs. That's custom, right? But really, really cool. Do you need your OTF to have zero blade play? Let's get this out of the way right off the bat. No, it doesn't. It's not giving you any sort of utilitarian benefit, but this has been a feature on a very, very popular and famous custom OTF for a long time, and it's been up on a pedestal. It tickles the fancies of knife enthusiasts, for sure. I'm one of those people who has had his fancy thoroughly tickled by the Hawk Deadlock. I'm sure Gavin will be laughing at that, but I love that. I think it's really, really cool. I also think it's neat that Microtech actually managed to implement it on a production OTF, but this is more expensive than the standard Ultratech. I think these start at $379. Wow. And the standard Ultratechs are $290 something. I'm almost certain that you'll see the price on the standard Ultratechs go down. I don't know if they plan to make the standard ones alongside these ZBTs for the foreseeable future, or if they plan to completely phase them out. In any case, the standard Ultratechs, which work just fine and are essentially the same, there's obviously some differences here, but if you're wondering, like, is it absolutely necessary and worth it to pay more money for this guy? I'm going to go through the review, but like, let's just start this off and I'll tell you. No, not from a utility and capability standpoint. No, this just is cool. Does that make sense? They're linked in the description, the standard ones and this one, right? You can check them out if you want to. But if that's all you wanted to hear, then I'll tell you that right up front. No problem. Thanks so much to the owner of eKnives who loaned me his personal ZBT for me to check out. I'll link these at eKnives. Definitely worth checking out eKnives. Thanks so much to my patrons for supporting me. I'm also going to link down in the description a wonderful demonstration of the disassembly and how to tune this ZBT system, because over time, this will inevitably, whether just from deploying it and retracting it or using it, right? Even if you're using it responsibly, right? You don't necessarily have to be pounding it into whatever, whatever the crazy destruction tests are out there, right? Over time, the system is going to loosen up and you're not going to have zero blade tolerance. So they made this system adjustable, which I think is really, really cool. You can not adjust it and it'll be fine, or you can go in and adjust it. I'll let you guys know right now it's a little bit finicky, but you can do it. So that video will be linked down in the description so you guys can get a good look at the internals if you want to. Let's go ahead and measure it. It's an Ultratech. I don't think it's any different than a standard Ultratech. I just don't have one here to show you. 8¼ inches or 8½ inches with the breaker. Blade length is, man, that's amazing. 3.65 inches. The cutting edge is actually a little shy of 3¼ inches. I'll go ahead and do just a couple of size comparisons because we've done this so many times with the Ultratech. There's custom scales in this section can be found down in the description under original goat and others, up against the 8010, 8020.5, full size but slender knife. And then let's just do the PM2 and the Para 3. So PM2 and Para 3, very similar to the overall length of the PM2. How's the action? That's very important, right? A lot of people, if the last time that you handled a Microtech OTF or an Ultratech or whatever was like, years and years and years ago, you might remember that they're a little bit stiff and a little bit sharp on the button. The buttons are still sharp, for sure, but the deployment has been made substantially easier. These have what I refer to as easy switches. I actually don't know what they call it, but wow, it's substantially easier to operate. The big issue with the SOG Pentagon, which was a terrible attempt at you know, capitalizing on this totally unnecessary zero blade play system that was only properly implemented by Hawk at the time. The issue with the Pentagon was that it did not deploy reliably. The edge actually rubbed on the frame, and it wasn't always fully, you know, zero blade play. And I don't think that could be easily adjusted. I'm not really sure. Microtech managed to do all of this. Like the edge obviously doesn't grind on the frame. They wouldn't have released a knife that did that. It's incredibly easy to deploy. I mean, I can do this with my index finger. It's super easy, right? And legitimately, this entire time that and again, I don't do any extensive testing. I'm mostly a design reviewer, so I just carried and used this like a regular knife, and it was cool. This entire time, it actually has stayed complete. I mean it, not a hint. It's solid, just like my deadlock. Now, if I took this out and used it for a year, just a few months, and it was my dedicated EDC, and I was I'm not going to take it out and baton with it, but breaking down boxes, that would be a little tricky with a dagger blade, but breaking down boxes and periodically cutting a zip tie and, you know, doing things that you would actually do with a pocket knife. Would I expect it to loosen up? Yeah, almost certainly, right? So at some point, if you really care that everything is tightened up and absolutely zero tolerance, then you should expect to have to get in there and do that, right? Which again, there's a demonstration on how to do that and what it looks like on the inside down in the description. If you don't want to watch it, it's pretty cool. Actually, it almost looks like a pivot that's sitting on the OTF, and the way that he demonstrated is he keeps moving it out, locking it up, making a slight adjustment, feeling for blade play, and if there is some, he moves it back down, adjusts it slightly, pulls it up, makes sure that the locking tabs move back into place, right? At least by slow manual or by slamming it as it would when you deploy it. It's kind of a neat system, right? I think it's really cool that they made this adjustable. I don't think that's the coolest feature, though. There's definitely a couple of other really, really neat features that are going to be beneficial for just regular Joes like me. But action, good. Button, a little bit sharp, and it's rattles a little bit. Some people really get upset about button play. That doesn't resonate with me, but then again, I'm really picky with other little tiny things. So I don't. If you wanted to know, the button in the stock, I think there's a way actually to adjust the play out of that as well, but it moves a little bit in the closed position and in the open position. I don't really care, but there you go. So yeah, the action really nice outside of the button being a bit sharp, right? I think one of the most comfortable buttons out there is like the Kershaw Livewire, which by the way I still think is probably the best buy. Like if you really want to know, like the Kershaw Livewire is probably still the best buy in this department. But great action, legitimately solid, can be adjusted. Really impressive, really neat that they did it, right? We already live in a world where pocket knives have tons of elements that nobody needs. So of course it's cool to see something like this from Microtech, even if you don't need it. I mean, nobody really needs it. It's just neat that they did it. So nice. Carry profile, I mean, yeah, it's a really easy to carry OTF. I like the size and the shape. I mean, obviously, if you've never seen it before, here it is up against the Para 3. It's actually a little thinner. And then length and height-wise, this is obviously going to be a very easy object to carry in all but the thinnest and tightest of pants. Really nice. This clip is different than the double bent tactical whatever clip, which admittedly is fine. This has a giant ceramic ball and is a titanium clip. I used to hate these, and honestly, I still do when they're really small balls and the clip is like much closer to the frame. I hate them because they're so pinchy. Admittedly, though, this is fine, and I can't remember which knife it was from Microtech that had this almost this exact same clip with this huge ball, right? And I use it. I expected in the unboxing, I said, I'm going to hate this. And I used it. And because of the size of it, I was like, oh, this actually works really well. Like, for example, you can't see it, but I'm wearing sweatpants right now. And this is really easy to get in and out of the pocket. And it's got really good retention too. So I'm not really worried that it's going to come flying out. So, yeah, I think that's great. But anyways, we've done the carry profile and everything. Let's weigh it real quick so that you guys can see what it actually weighs. You know, there it is. Sorry about that. Weight on the ZBT Ultratech, all we have to do is turn that on. Weight on the ZBT Ultratech coming in at 3.6 ounces, which some people might consider heavy for this size of object. I don't think so. Balance is about right here. it's not going to matter to everybody. Let's go ahead and do a hardware check. I'll get out my tools as per usual. My tools are very inexpensive and very recommendable. You can find them right down in the section of my description that talks about the tools I use on this channel. I think this is a T25 back here. Boy, is it even bigger? We're going to use the T30? I don't think so. That's a freaking T30. Okay, cool. And then you have, I think the rest of these are T8. Almost certainly. Microtech's not going to mess around with a T6 on a newer one, are they? Surely not. Yeah, T6. I've heard that these can be pretty heavily Loctited. Now, admittedly, I don't know what Microtech's exact warranty is or their policy on disassembly. I would assume if they make a system that is meant to or able to be adjusted as time goes on, that disassembling your Microtech doesn't void the warranty. But I'm assuming. I don't know that. So if you're having an issue or you're like, oh, I'd like to adjust mine or just see how it works, contact Microtech first so that you can individually get this information directly from Microtech. And if it's something that they would prefer to do and then you don't void your warranty, great, right? But don't just be like, I'm going to assume and then mess something up and then point the finger at me afterwards. Don't do that, right? But if you need to get in there and you're like, I don't care about the warranty, well, then there you go. Outside of the Loctite situation, which might require you to heat things up. That was actually disappointing to hear. Heard that from a number of people, that these are so heavily Loctited in some cases, really hard to get into. So yeah, that kind of sucks. But maybe Microtech, I don't know why you'd be watching, but if you are, like, are you guys using red Loctite? That's crazy. But anyways, if you really need to get in there, right, you're dedicated to it, you can, and it can be adjusted, which is cool. It's just not the easiest thing in the world to do, which is a bummer. Let's go ahead and measure the blade stock thickness. I really doubt they changed anything. Obviously, you have a, this is a dagger blade, so the flat's like way back here, and the geometry is going to be totally different than some of the other geometries. This is 123 thousandths by my measurement. You have the drop point blade, and almost certainly they'll do a whole number of things. Tanto, partially serrated, half serrated, fully serrated, right? Blah, blah, blah. So there you go. That's blade stock thickness. Okay, we've done all of that. Let's talk about this. Meat and potatoes. It's the Ultratech, which is one of the most famous. It's like 95 to 98% entirely made in the United States. Definitely. You are, with any Microtech product, paying a premium for the Microtech logo to be on there, but they are usually pretty darn good with their quality control and consistency. This knife utilizes M390MK for the steel and aluminum for the body, and obviously steel for the chassis, titanium for the pocket clip. M390MK here lately, which is a special version of M390 that's made exclusively for Microtech by Bowler. In the early days, this stuff was being heat treated at a suboptimal range, which is the opinion of a lot of people in the knife community. The appropriate HRC range is obviously opinion based, right? Personally, I like to see this composition at 60 plus. Right, geometry obviously plays a huge role, and this doesn't have optimized geometry for cutting anything, right? But the M390MK was scoring low, let's say. Here recently, there have been some people who've tested it, and apparently, I don't know this to be absolutely true, apparently it's testing higher. At 60 or higher, maybe in some cases 59. If that's true, which I'd like to wait and see, after months and months and months, if we're getting like lots of different people. I don't have Rockwell testing equipment, but a lot of these channels who do this, if we're seeing that it's consistently hardened that high, then that's really great. Perhaps Microtech just started shadow implementing this higher Rockwell hardness, which would be really, really cool. Using this and cutting things with it. I don't do anything with these knives where it's enough cutting, enough consistent cutting to be able to tell you specifically, right? But 57 or so, sometimes I've tested some like really light testing with 57 HRC M390, and it will dull incredibly fast, right? This doesn't seem to be that, so it seems to be at least higher than that, but just typical cutting cardboard and a lot of Christmas stuff. Honestly, I had this with me with all of the pre-Christmas stuff and the post-Christmas stuff. So it went through a lot of wrapping paper and cardboard and just typical light cutting stuff, and it was fine, right? I actually don't have any edge issues, there shouldn't be any chipping or rolling, cutting, stuff like that, but nothing. It's been great. As far as fit and finish on the symmetry, this appears to be absolutely perfect right down the center. The edge equal on both sides, and even that fuller right down the middle. I've got a lot of Microtech knives where it's this area that we all focus on. And by the way, I think it's absolutely perfect on both sides. Is that slightly off? Yeah, I think it is. Slightly off, but it is. I've got a lot. Oh yeah, you can see it on this side. It's almost perfect, but that fuller is favoring a little bit to the left, and that's typical, right? It's hard to get these absolutely perfect. But if that's going to bother you, then I would recommend the single edge, right? Pretty good. This side is legitimately perfect. So it is possible to get one, right? Where everything's absolutely perfect. This has the apocalyptic finish. I always like the stonewash finish. You also can get it in satin. I'm sure they'll do shadow and charge you more for it, right? I hate that they have to put Ultratech on the blade. Like, we know what it is. I do like that they're blacking out these logos and just milling them in and not putting the white in there. I think that looks better. We don't have the Microtech paragraph on the Ultratech. Thank God, because that just looked awful. I think all the way around, there's the subtle changes, the little tiny things like the big screw back here to accommodate for the pocket clip, which by the way is fully reversible. That's nice. This looks good. Even with the Ultratech on the blade, we don't have the paragraph on at least this version, so that's fine. I just wish they would. The buttons are just so sharp and aggressive. I wish they would knock that back just a little bit. Outside of that, though, really, really cool. This is cool. This is cool factor, which is what you're paying for, right? Definitely plenty durable and plenty capable, but cool factor. One of the most interesting and utilitarian features of this new one here is this area back here, which will actually, not perfectly, I'm not saying you can completely and totally rely on this system to do this, but if you can see here, I'm going to pull this back, and you can see those areas right there, that piece of metal, right? It's this will shove debris and dirt and stuff back out of the knife. It's not absolutely perfect, right? And using your knife in a normal setting will result in occasionally or very rarely a piece of debris getting stuck inside the knife. This allows it to be kicked back out. In a lot of cases, you'll still have to wash it out or blow it out or whatever, right? And maybe reapply your rem oil because you definitely don't want moisture like being trapped in there. But this does do something that most OTFs don't do. I really like that. And I've seen it demonstrated many times on YouTube, and I think that's really, really cool. So ultimately, if you're gonna buy this and you're wondering about the utilitarian benefits, right? Because you're paying not just more than the standard Ultratech, but let's compare it to realistically another US-made OTF, right? Like the best bang for your buck out there for US full-size OTF, and that's probably, in my opinion, the Kershaw Livewire. You are paying $140. No, the least expensive versions of the Livewire are like $220, aren't they? $220 to $240. You're paying at least $140 more for, a tool that 99.999% of the time is going to be equally as capable, right? The benefits to this one being, I guess you can be like, oh, I carry a Microtech, right? I get it. It's cool, right? You get that brand cool factor. But mainly you get the bragging rights of it being zero blade play. My OTF has zero blade play, right? A lot of people will be impressed with that without even thinking about what benefit it offers, which is zero. So yeah, you get that. And some people, that's going to be enough. Admittedly, that is enough to win me over. I understand that there's not a major utilitarian benefit there, but I will pay more for that. But I'm going to wait until they offer it inevitably in some of their bigger boys, right? The Combat Troodon and especially the Scarab, right? They will win me over. That knife is already overpriced, and they'll probably charge me another $100 or $150 to have that system implemented, and I will grit my teeth and probably pay for it. despite knowing that it's a ridiculous upcharge. You're getting that, but you're also getting that little debris exhaust kind of system, which again is not going to work and make it perfect, but it allows the system to more easily clear itself. There's a lot of shaking and redeploying and stuff like that involved, right? I never had that happen. This never, I didn't get like a chunk of cardboard or anything caught in there. But knowing that it would do that, it did admittedly make me feel a little more like, yeah, I don't have to check this knife every time I cut something. Many times with my other Microtech OTFs, I'm like looking at the blade and something's caught here and I'm like, oop, need to clear that because otherwise it's going right into the frame, which we don't want, right? It did make me feel a little better. Like I cut things with it and I was like, yeah, okay, I'm done. I'm putting it in my back of my pocket, you know? So I do think that that's neat. But are all of these systems, is everything combined worth paying an additional, this is a $380 object, right? Sounds like I'm being really dramatic considering I regularly showcase knives that cost over $1,000 on this channel. As a tool, like if you're specifically someone who's just like, I want the American feature, right? If you don't care about it being from the USA, then oh my God, buy a Max Ace Neptune, right? But if it has to be from the USA and you're like, outside of that, I just want to know that it's reliable and it's going to work. Well, then buy the Livewire, right? Or the EMP EDC Pulse that's made by Axial, or the Guardian Tactical Recon 35. Like those are fine. If you want the features, if you want the special stuff, you're like, I don't want the Chevy, I want the GMC Denali, right? It's the same thing, but I want all the special stuff, right? I get it. Yeah. Then this is really cool. Adjustable zero blade play system that actually does work. You can over adjust it to make it where it won't deploy, right? Yeah, it's really cool. And just having it, every now and then I check it and I'm like, God, that's cool. It doesn't wiggle at all. It's solid, right? So easy to fire. And then the system where it kicks the debris back out of there. I really wish that they had some easier way to adjust this system. If Microtech made the clearing of the chassis, I think they did a pretty good job here, but where this would really, like, that $380 would really feel like yes, if the chassis clearing system, whatever they call that, was perfect and ultra reliable, and it just was like a matter of cycling it and it will clear essentially anything outside of you like filling it up with quick dry cement or something like that. Obviously, that would be amazing, but also the adjustable zero blade tolerance system. If it didn't require so much finagling and so much, if they could make that way more accessible without sacrificing any other part of the structural integrity or the usability of the knife, then that would really have gone a long ways. As that all sits, though, this is really, really cool. And I think people who are really interested in these systems will really enjoy this knife. And it'll be worth it to them. For the vast majority of people, if you're just wanting a good tool, save some money and buy one of the less expensive options, or buy one of the Ultratechs that are going to be substantially less expensive or even go on sale at some point, as they are probably phased out over time. As it sits, though, really cool. I'm going to put it in my favorite knives playlist, and I'm hesitant to put it in recommended because I want the context to be there, but recommended for some, not for others, so typical of many knives on this channel. But I do think it's neat. I'm glad that they did it. I'm really glad that they did it because it implies that there's a whole bunch of additional interesting things to come from Microtech with their other products. For a long time with the Surefire, I thought that, these were going to be exclusive multi-$1,000 systems. And I was like, well, what's the point? Because I just wasn't very well informed. But I was like, at that point, it's like, just buy the Deadlock or just buy the one that looks cooler to you. But the fact that they can get that special system in a much less expensive knife is pretty cool. I also want to add in that it looks like the system is very, very similar outside of the adjustability. The system is really similar to the Hawk Deadlock system. I find it I don't know what the copyright or patent thing is with Hawk. I like hawk knives. I think they're cool. Obviously, with a hawk knife, you're not just paying for the zero blade place system. You're paying for an object that is custom. They're small batch items, and it's a much smaller company that's making things much slower and definitely with better tolerances, more machining quality overall. If we're going to compare Microtech to hawk knives, it's not like all of a sudden it's the same thing and hawk is just overcharging. No, it's still substantially more expensive to create the hawk deadlock than it is the Microtech Ultratech. And the hawk deadlocks now are also made out of titanium, right? So not the only factor, but there's a bunch of variables there making the hawk deadlock cost so much money. And then on top of that, what was a proprietary locking system through Hawk. Kind of wish that Microtech had figured out a little more unique way to do it instead of just using essentially the same thing that Hawk was using, but I guess they can do it. So yeah, it's like I said, it's going to be worth it for some people and not for others, but I think it's really, really cool. And Microtech's going to get my business, even if I have to overpay for it. So there you go. That's my review. Really cool. This will be going back to the owner of eKnives. I don't get to keep it, but I will link these at eKnives. They're going to be a little tricky to get for a little bit, but I have no doubt that eventually these will be common. You'll see them all over the place. So please make sure to follow me on Instagram at metal_complex. If you enjoyed this video, leave a like. If you'd like to check out my other content, I do, of course, have lots of videos of knives that are either expensive or inexpensive that I do or don't like. So check those out. And if you enjoy all my content, go ahead and click on that Metal Complex logo right there and subscribe because there's definitely more coming. Thanks again for watching, everybody, and have a great day.